Okay, so what I want to do now is create a app model. So when I click on this, I want a model to appear with the list of the contacts coming from the Firestore database. So coming from here, all of the users that get listed on here. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the components folder, I'm just going to create a new folder in here called app model. And in here, I'm going to create a file index.tsx and RAFCE. This is the app model component, and this is a react.fc. And what I want to do is create this model and make it reusable. So what we'll be doing is importing the model coming from Material UI. So if we check the docs from Material UI, if we scroll down, we have a section where it talks about models just here. So this is the type of model we want to create. As you can see, this is what we will be doing. So if we go back in our app, we're going to have an outer div and then an inner div inside here, and this is going to be the toggle for the whether the model is open or not. So on click is going to be equal to handle open, which we need to create some use state for that, and then we're going to render a icon that we click on. So we will pass that in as props, and let's close that div off. So the props we will receive is the icon as the first prop. After that, what I want to do is just bring in my code. So essentially what I'm doing is bringing in model, which is coming from Material UI. The box is coming from Material UI. And then what I want to do is, first of all, render a title, which comes from the props as well. So that will be the title being rendered within the model. So everything in here is the model. So everything inside this div here. And then we got an extra div, so we don't need that. And we need to create use state for the open and the handle open and handle close functionality. So let's create that now. So essentially what it is the use state of open and set open. Handle open will basically set open to true, and handle close will set open to false. I also need the box styling. So I'm going to create that in a separate helper file. So helper.ts. And if we go into Material UI documentation, it gives you the box style anyway, so we can just copy that, which is essentially this over here. So if we go in our code here, and I just want to export this like so, and it's going to be called box style. So now all I need to do is import this box style in from the helper, and now I need to render the app model somewhere. So passing in the icon and the title, and I also want to pass in the model type because we want it to be reusable, so we can handle the model children inside here. So first of all, I'm going to create props. So type props is equal to icon title model type, and then we just need to pass this in here like so. So the icon is going to be a JSX element because the icon is coming from Material UI, which is essentially a component. So JSX element, and then the title will be a string and a model type will be a string. So that's fine. So we need to then import app model onto the sidebar header component. So let's find that component in the sidebar header. So instead of the chat outline icon, it's going to be the app model like so. But what will happen is we will pass in the relevant props. So the props for app model is the icon, which is the chat outlined icon. The title is a string of all contacts, and this model type is the chat, or you could call it contacts, whatever you wish. So now that is there. So now if I save, and now if I click onto here, we now have a model working on the page which says all contacts. So now what we need to do is fetch all of the user information in here. So now what I want to do in here is fetch all of the user information, but we need to add some users into our user database. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to quickly add some users and be right back. So if we go into our Cloud Firestore, all we want to do is add a document. So add a document, auto ID in here, and then I'm just going to add another user in. So I've got a user of Yoda from Star Wars. So this is an email address. We want to add in the name, which is Yoda. We want to add the photo, which I will get. And then last online is a timestamp. So this will be of type timestamp. You can put whatever you want in here. I'm just putting in some random time in there. And then the last one is the UID. So this is the structure of what we will have in our database when we create a new user. And it is the same when we do that and we are doing that already. So now we have two other users other than myself. So we should be able to fetch Darth Vader and Yoda into our all contacts modal. So going back into our code in here, I've got this function in here which handles the children of the modal dependent on what modal type it is. So we need to create this function. So if I create this function in the helper, so export const the handle modal children, and this will bring in the relevant argument, which is the modal type, the contacts, and handle close, which is essentially going to close the modal. So we need to define these types. So first off, the icon modal type is going to be a type that we need to create. So type of icon modal type is a union type, and it's not add and edit, it's going to be upload, and it's also going to be the chat, which is what we passed in as props. That one's set up correctly, and I just want to export it in case it's needed elsewhere in the app. And then the contacts type is essentially going to be this object here. So email, last online, name, photo, and UID. So what I'm going to do is declare this in the types.d.ts over here, and I'm just going to bring it at the bottom, which is the contacts type of email string, ID of string, last online is an object, name, photo, and UID. So all I will do is put ID as optional because we don't have it in at the moment. So that is the contact type. So if we go back into our helper function, we just need to import this in now, like so, which is there. And then in here, we need to handle something. So I'm going to handle it based on the modal type. So switch modal type. If it is upload, then we want to return upload modal, which we can do in here. So upload modal. And again, we want to pass in the handle close because that is being passed in from the parent component, so in app modal, like so. And then we also want the case for chat, which essentially is going to be the chat modal, and we pass in the contacts and the handle close as well. So the default is just going to be a return like that. And then finally, we just need to close it off, and we don't need to return anything actually. So there's a few things we need to do. Upload modal needs to be created, and also the chat modal. So what I'll do with the upload modal is just put it in strings for now. So it just returns that as a string. And then the chat modal we need to create inside here. So new file is going to be chatmodal.tsx. And what you can do is you can separate it into subfolders or however you want to have your folder structure. But for this, I'm just going to put it in the same folder. And I'm going to do refce. And then in here, I'm just going to put a p tag. This is the chat modal. So, and then react.fc in here and save. And I'm going to also create the upload modal as well. Upload modal.tsx and paste this in, but instead of chat this time, it's just going to be upload like so. And then in the helper, all I now need to do is import it in from the relevant file path. And if I save all and then import from the relevant file path. But what I also need to do, I've just realized, is I've got JSX in this file, but this is only a TS file. So let's rename this to TSX because we are rendering JSX in here. So now we can import the relevant files that we need. And then if we just copy these as they are needed in the relevant modal files. So chat modal will receive these props in here of contact and handle close, like so, and we just need to put a comma in here, and then the upload modal will have the handle close in here, like so. And again, we need to define the types for these, so we can do that in a helper file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do index.interface.ts, which will handle all of the types in this app modal folder. So first off, we've got this type in here, which we want to handle in the interface file. So paste that in, and then we can import this in here. The handle close is going to be of type void. So essentially, it's not returning anything. So going into here, we need chat modal props, and we also need upload modal props. So export type of chat modal props, and chat modal props, it takes in contact and handle close. So we already have copied the handle close one. So I just need to copy the contacts one as well, paste them in, and import contacts type from the types.d.ts over here. And then I just want to copy this, but this time it's going to be the upload modal props. And in the upload modal props, we just need the handle closed this time. So going back in here, we can delete this one. So now we have chat modal props, which is the type that we can import. So that is handled there. And then the upload modal props is handled in here. And then if we go into here, we just need to import handle modal children. And we can see here there's an error saying string is not assignable to parameter icon modal type. So if we go into modal type, that is a string and cannot find name contacts. So we would need to fetch the contacts. So first of all, I'm going to say const contacts is an array. So that's the contacts. And then the modal type we need to pass in. So now we've got the error of modal type. I just want to double check the prop of modal type is being passed in correctly. So it's either upload or chat. So if I go into the sidebar header component, the modal type is chat. So that is correct. And it's a string as well. So that's fine. So if we go into the app modal once again, and app modal receives icon, title, and modal type. So essentially what I want to do here is change this from a string to icon modal type, and then that error should fix itself now, which it has done. And then contacts, we now need to fetch the contacts data. So let's go ahead and do that. So now what I want to do is fetch contacts in real time. So fetch user data, user contacts in real time from Firestore, like so. And then we need contacts. So I'm going to declare the use state for contacts, which is going to be equal to contacts type array. And then after that, I'm going to bring in a use effect. So essentially what would happen is the use effect would have an on snapshot of the user's collection, which is coming from our user controller, which essentially is accessing the collection of the Firestore and in particular the user's collection. So going back into our app modal, we need to import the snapshot, which is of type query snapshot and document data. So that is imported up top here, document data and query snapshot. And then now we need to create a get snapshot doc function. And essentially what a get snapshot doc function is essentially an object that is going to be returned. So let's go ahead and create that in the user controller. So what I'm going to do is create the function. So export function of get snapshot doc. And this takes in a doc, which is of type document data from Firestore. So if I import that, and essentially what will happen is it will return an object of id of doc.id and data of doc.data in here. So that is the structure that it will have. So if I go back in app modal, all I now need to do is import that in, and now that is all the contacts set. What I now want to do is console log the contacts just to see if we are fetching the contacts in here. So we should be getting 3 contacts, including the logged in contact as well. So if I go back into the browser, in here, it's just loading now. So if we inspect and we want to see in the console the contacts list. So when I open the modal, we now have a list of 3 contacts in here. That is including myself. So we need to filter myself out from here. So let's go ahead and render the UI now. So in the browser, we are getting the contacts in here. So let's delete this console log, and then in handle modal children, what we now have is access to the contacts. So in the chat modal, which is where the contacts are being rendered and passed in as props, all we now need to do is go into here, and instead of chat modal, this should be called the contact list. So let me just rename this chat modal to contact list across the board. So now that it is the contact list, if we go into it, we just need to render the UI for the contact list. Now we have access to the contacts. First of all, what I want to do is filter. So contact.filter. So for each contact.id, I want to get access to the one that is not equal to the auth.currentuser.uid, which is essentially all the contacts that are not the same as the logged in user. So that's the first thing we need to do. And I want to do optional chaining here. Then I want to do .map. And for each contact, I want to implicitly return a div or h1 for now, just saying the contact.name in here, just to see if that works. So now if I save, we have an error in here. So we just need to add an extra parentheses in here. And there's an error because we need to add a key to all React children. And this key is going to be the contact.id in here. So now if I save and check the browser, we should have a list of 2 contacts in here, which is Darth Vader and Yoda, because we filtered out myself. which is in the contacts array over here. So that's fine. Now that that is working correctly, I'm now going to create a div. So instead of a h1 this time, it's going to be a div. The key of the div is going to be the contact.uid, and then it's going to have a class name as well for this div. And I'm just going to bring in the styling for the class name of flex, justify store, item to center, a padding on the y-axis of 4 with a gap of 4, and some hover styling as well. I'm going to bring in a user avatar as well, so we can see the user avatar's image in here. And then we also need a div that has the contact name, so p with the contact dot name in here, and then also the date, so that will be a p tag of contact dot last online. So you get in the TypeScript IntelliSense now, and I'm just going to say seconds in here. So now if I save, essentially we're filtering out myself, the logged in user, then we're mapping over each user to render this UI here. What you could do is split this out into its own component as well to make it more reusable. But for now, what I'm going to do is just check the browser, and now you can see all of the contacts are being shown in here. All that we need to do now is handle the date. So I will do that with function overloads with TypeScript. And then when we click on a user, what we want to do is then navigate to a new URL with a new ID, so the recipient's ID. And then we want to create a new chat in here for the new user that we've clicked on in here. Okay, so now that the contacts are rendering in the modal, what I want to do is when I click on it, I want to navigate to a new page with the recipient's ID. So Darth Vader's ID when I click on him, and Yoda's ID when I click on him, and then that chat should open. And then also what I want to do is format the date for this, because this is an, and then what I also want to do is create a function overload with TypeScript and format the date as well. So let's first of all do the routing. So in my component here, when I click onto this div here, I'm going to have a function call. So this function is going to be called choose contact. So let's go ahead and create this function on click. So this function is going to be called choose contact in here. And what I want to do with choose contact is pass in the contact and also pass in the handle clause. And I also want to navigate to the relevant page. So I'm going to pass in the router, and I need to import that in at the top here. So const router is equal to use router, which is coming from next navigation. So what I'm going to do is create this function in the helper file over here. So just underneath export const of choose contact, which is a function like so. And this function with choose contact will receive a few arguments in here. So the first one is the contact, the handle clause, and then the router. So if I go back in contact list, router is of app router instance. So we just copy that across. Then we also need to import this in from the next folder. And then the first thing I want to do is invoke the handle clause function, because when we click on a contact, we want to close the modal off. And then other than that, we want to navigate to router.push /chat /contact.uid like so. So now if I go back into my contact list in here, all I need to do now is import this function. So now if I save, I have now rendered the on-click for the choose contact in my contact list. And now let's test to see if that works. So in here, I'm going to click on Darth Vader, and I should get the relevant UID for Darth Vader. So it will be / the UID, which is this one here, ending in flu. So let's try it out. So as you can see, it has changed and it ends in flu here. So that's working correctly. The only thing to do now is format the date. So let's create a function overload with TypeScript. So essentially, I want to have a function overload in the helper of format date. So I'll just add this in underneath. So this is a TS function overload. So this would seem a little weird at first, but what happens is you declare a function multiple times and take in different types of arguments. So essentially, first argument is going to be called export function of format date, which is a function that can take in a date that is of type number. So that is in our case is the type number, and then it will return a string. The second one is pretty much the same, but now we are returning a date this time. So the type is date, and then again returns a string. And then what we want to do now is we want to type check this. So export function of format date, and this time it's going to take in an argument of, let's call it arg1, and this type is going to be of unknown. And then what this function will do is it will return a string once again, but this time we're going to have the parentheses, and then we're going to check for the type of arg1 this time, and we're going to see if it's a number we want to do something, if it's a date we want to do something. So it's already kind of given it me here, so we can, first of all, if type of arg1 is equal to a number, so if the date is basically a number, or arg1 is a number, because at this moment in time it's unknown, so we don't know what it is, then we want to do something in here. So I'm going to put in a comment in here. So, and also I want to put in a comment in at the top as well. So this is doing the type check at runtime and not build time or compile time. So this is very important to understand. And then what we want to do is, if it is of type number, we want to convert Unix timestamp to date below to a date. So I've got the blocker code in here. So let's just bring that in as the return. So paste that in like so. And we could chain it on like this and check do multiple if checks. But in my case, what I want to do is just do an else block, because there's only two arguments it's going to be. It's going to be of type number, or it's going to be of type date in here. So the second argument, what I'm going to do is bring in the functionality in here. So const today's date is going to be a new date to locale string of the US. You could do whatever you want in there. And then what happens is this second argument of to locale string, you can see here you get year, month, day, week, day, hour, and so on. And then if you hover over it, you can have the options, the union types of numeric, 2 digits, or undefined. So you can select what you essentially want in here, like that. So now that is the function overload complete. So what we are doing is we're checking the type of arg1. At the minute it's unknown. It could be a number or it could be a date, and then it will return whatever the type of is in here. So if it is a number, it will return time only, or if it's a date, then it will return today's date, like so. So now all I need to do is get this format date in here, and then go into my contact list, and then where we got the time in seconds, I just need to wrap it in format date in here, and then all I do is import it in from the helper. So now if I save, the date should now be working correctly. So let's just double check that out in the browser. And I click here. You can see here now the date's showing in the exact same correct way. So this is when I actually created the users. So that is that section. And then when I click onto Yoda, for example, that URL there changes as well. One final thing that I want to do is, when I navigate between pages, there should be some sort of loading state. So in my chat app folder in here, in the app directory, I'm going to create a new file in here. So this is loading.psx, which is a guarded keyword for anything to do with loading on the next app router. So essentially all I'm going to do is paste in loading from here, and then I just need to implement the loader, which is coming from the common components in here, like so. So now if I save, and then I navigate to a new page, so like Darth Vader, you can see the loader showing up there. So that is that section complete.